Good morning, HPC. Nice to see you. Welcome to Friday, the 4th of December, and to the fourth of our readings in this book, The Christmas We Didn't Expect. The reading today looks particularly at Philippians chapter 2, verse 8. I want us to look at just the verses around that and think about the implications they have for us as we head towards Christmas. It's striking, verse 6, that before Christmas, as we've already said, Jesus existed, his pre-existence, if you like, as the eternal Son of God, eternally begotten of the Father. He was there before there was anything, and certainly before he was laid in an animal feeding trough in Bethlehem. We come to this word, speaks of him having the form of God, and that means having the true and exact nature, possessing all the qualities of God. Therefore, having the form of God is like saying that he was God. He was equal with, and it's contrasted in verse 7 with the idea of taking the form of a servant, of a slave. And the Son of God is and always has been God. God came down at Christmas, we sometimes say, don't we? It's possible that the idea of him being in the form of God could refer to him being in the ultimate image of God, the exact imprint of his nature, as Hebrews chapter 1 says. And it might also say that he's the visible expression of the invisible God, the form of God, if you like. Now, remarkably, Jesus didn't think that having equality with God, which he did have, being in the form of God, was something that should lead him to cling on to that at all costs, to protect it or to use it for his advantage, to exploit it for his own ends. Instead, he had the mindset of a servant. In great humility, he considered the interests of others before his own interests. So verse 7 goes on to say he made himself nothing. Now, that doesn't mean, as is evidenced by his life, it doesn't mean that he stopped being God. We only have to look at his remarkable miracles to, in the words of the children's song, we sometimes think, well, only God could do that. Only God could do the things that Jesus did. And Jesus did not suspend or give up that divine nature. Rather, he added to it human nature. He made himself nothing. Jesus, who had all the privileges that were rightly his as King of the universe, gave them up to become a Jewish baby born to a family of no consequence, and most significantly, bound for the cross. The idea of making himself nothing, taking the form of a servant, he didn't have to do that. I suppose that's one of the staggering things, isn't it? Christmas is a gift. He did not have to do that. We sometimes say, oh, you shouldn't have. Oh, that was very generous of you. Jesus did not have to make himself nothing. He didn't have to give up the glory that was rightly his. He didn't have to come into the darkness and the sin and the mess of our world. He could have stayed in the position of power, the position of glory which he deserves and which is rightly his. But he chose not to. He loved us so much that he was prepared to give up all of that and humble himself, taking the form of a servant. Now, it's remarkable enough that Jesus would come into our world, into the darkness and the sin and the mess, that he would get involved. But Philippians tells us he went even further than that, didn't he? He became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Crucifixion was not the most efficient way of killing people. It was not the most convenient way of executing Roman prisoners. It was the ultimate indignity. It was a public statement that the empire, that Rome, held this person in complete contempt. The excruciating physical pain was matched and magnified by the humiliation and degradation of this particular form of death. No other form of death, no matter how painful, was designed to shame and completely destroy the personhood of whoever it was who was being executed like this. It is, if you like, the very lowest of the lows compared with the very highest of the highs that Jesus enjoyed before Christmas, before his incarnation. And he stooped not just to our world, but to death on a cross. It's therefore the ultimate expression of Jesus' obedience and love to his Father, and the ultimate expression of his love for us. It's why we can say and sing that love came down at Christmas. And it's why it's so important for us to keep the cross in view, even as we worship around the cradle. Have a really good weekend, HPC, and I'll be back on Monday with more reflections.